The answer to the shutdown stalemate, the debt ceiling dispute. Joining us now, two members of Congress. Republican Jeb Hensarling of Texas. He's the chairman of the Financial Services Committee. Democratic Congressman Steve Israel of New York. He chairs the Democratic Committee. I just want to make sure both of you agree with that dire scenario, Congressman Hensarling, first view that Tom Foreman just laid out. Do you accept that?
Oh, I think it would be quite dire for America to default on its bonds, on its sovereign debt. That's why House Republicans back in May put forth H.R. 807, the Full Faith and Credit Act, to say that the United States cannot default on its debt. Basically, it takes payment of interest and principal on our debt out of the calculation of the debt ceiling, and yet the president has issued a veto threat on this. The only conclusion you can reach is that he wants to use this as a hostage to force Congress to rubber stamp his spendthrift ways that are bankrupting our nation. That's not what the American people want. The debt ceiling is there for a purpose. I mean, it's like the smoke alarm, and Democrats want to unplug the smoke alarm, and Republicans want to go out and fight the fire.
All right, go ahead.
So that's the difference.
Congressman Israel, is that right?
Well, no surprise that I'm going to fundamentally disagree. And quite honestly, you know, I was in my district this morning in New York. People are tired of that kind of rhetoric. They're tired of the blame and the sound bites, Wolf. They want solutions, and there is a solution to this. Everything that Tom just mentioned, the consequences of a default, entirely avoidable. Jeb, you and I can go on the floor of the House. You just heard the bells ring. We can go on the floor of the House in an hour. We can reopen the government. 195 Democrats. That's 99% of our caucus will support
Steve,
your
then
own
why don't
budget.
you pay the full faith and
one at a time.
Please let me finish. We will provide you with 98% of our caucus if you can find 25 members of your own. That's step one. Step two, we will negotiate a long-term, continued, responsible and balanced approach to our debt as we have. We will cut spending. We'll work with you on that. We will generate revenues. We'll work with you on that. But you want to... And you have thrown in the kitchen sink in these negotiations.
Go ahead, Congressman.
Steve, your party has become the party of no. The president and Harry Reid could not make things more clear that they refuse to negotiate. House Republicans put on 1, 2, 3, 4 different proposals on the table. Now, we're not through negotiating, but we are through negotiating with ourselves. And again, if you want to take the specter of default off the table, then why don't you call upon the president, why don't you call upon Harry Reid to take it off the table and pass the Full Faith and Credit Act?
Here's why.
Now, when it comes...
All right, let him explain. Go ahead, Congressman Israel. Answer the question that the Congressman Hensarling just raised. Why won't you support that legislation so that there won't be this crisis raising the debt ceiling every few years?
For two reasons. Number one, because Jeb's legislation has the absolute wrong priorities for the middle class. What Jeb's legislation says is we can default. They accept the fact that we can default. If we do, China gets paid first. So if you're on Social Security, you get in line. If you're on Medicare, you get in line. If you're a veteran, you get a line. But an investment bank in China, you're first in line. That's the first reason I oppose this. And secondly, it's not necessary. We don't have to have bills ordering the priorities for paying our debt if Republicans will simply agree to pay the credit card bills that they themselves have mounted over the past several years.
So, Wolf, the short answer is we're going to hold the specter of default hostage for our spending priorities, the very same spending priorities that have created more debt in the president's first 4 years than our nation's first 200. We are on the road to national bankruptcy. And what you hear from the Washington class is, no, we'll deal with it tomorrow, we'll deal with it tomorrow. The debt ceiling vote, half the time we've had debt ceiling votes, we've attached to it something to bend the cost to put us back on the road to fiscal solvency. And in fact, pay as you go, when your party was in the majority, was attached to the debt ceiling. Gramm-Rudman, the Balanced Budget Act, the latest sequester, all attached to the debt ceiling.
Congressman Israel, go ahead.
Let's end the filibuster and let's talk about reality, Jeb. Have you voted for farm subsidies? Have you voted for farm subsidies?
I don't believe in farm subsidy. You're changing the subject.
No, I'm not. Here's the point I'm making. Why are you holding? Jeb, please let me make the point. Please don't interrupt. I've listened to your point, and I respect your point, but that's the problem with Washington. One side believes that they have all the absolutes, and they don't let the other side talk. So let me talk just for a moment. Both parties have been on the floor of the House, and both parties, in fact, have supported different kinds of investments and spending. Your party, in fact, has led the fight to support spending for things like farm subsidies. To now say that it's okay for us to do that spending but not pay the bill for that spending and hold the middle class hostage, I think is fundamentally wrong.
Okay, well, I can tell you what the fundamental difference is. American families understand that there's a fundamental difference when you borrow money for a mortgage, paying that mortgage, versus canceling your vacation to Las Vegas because you can no longer afford it. Okay, families every single day have to get around the kitchen table and prioritize. Payments on our bonds are not equivalent to funding the travel expenses for the Alabama watermelon queen, paying for pottery classes in Morocco, and the thousands of other things that squander the hard-working money of the hard-working taxpayer.
Very quickly answer that, because I have one follow-up question for Congressman Hensarling. Go ahead, Congressman.
Jeb, we're all for sitting down with you, as we did in the last debt ceiling cliff that you perpetrated on the American people, to negotiate specific spending cuts. The Budget Control Act cuts spending by $1 trillion. We are ready and able to negotiate going forward. We are going to support spending reductions. We also are going to support generating revenues, because you can't say that you're not going to exceed the debt ceiling because you don't want to raise taxes on the wealthiest. Let's take a balanced approach, the kind of balanced approach the American people want us to take.
One final question for Congressman Hensarling. Here's what the president said today, urging you, Republicans, to do this. Listen to the president.
If Republicans and Speaker Boehner are saying there are not enough votes, then they should prove it. Let the bill go to the floor and let's see what happens. Just vote. Let every member of Congress vote their conscience, and they can determine whether or not they want to shut the government down.
All right, so why not just allow an up-and-down vote on a clean resolution without any strings attached? If you have the votes, fine. If Speaker Boehner says there are no votes there, the president says there are, why not simply allow the vote, Congressman Hensarling?
Well, we have bipartisan support now to pay our veterans. The president said no. We have bipartisan votes.
Why not allow a simple up-and-down vote on this kind of resolution?
No, Wolf, why don't we take votes that have already passed the House with strong bipartisan support? To keep our parks open, the president has said no. To pay our veterans, the president has said no. To fund the Women's, Infant, and Children program, the president has said no.
All of that is true. But
pediatric cancer research at the National Institute of Health, the president has said no.
Here's the question. Are you afraid the president is right? If that clean CR comes up for a vote, it will pass?
No, I'm not in the least, but I hear they are theorizing about some bipartisan vote, but instead we have bipartisan support in the House, and the only person who's trying to ensure that key functions of the government are shut down is the president, Harry Reid, and a number of their Democratic congressional allies.
You got
not
the blame.
all of them.
I have 195.
We're getting 35 to 35 Democrats on all of these votes. So why isn't the president up the government? Again, he wants to use it hostage for his spending agenda that's helping bankrupt America and keeping tens of millions of our fellow Americans out of work.
We have 195 Democrats willing to support reopening the government in the next 15 minutes on your budget, Jeb, on your $998 billion budget. Take yes for an answer.
All right, we'll leave it on that note. I suspect that vote is not going to happen anytime soon, unless the Speaker decides he wants that vote to happen. And so far he has said no, and the president says no on all these piecemeal pieces of legislation that Congressman Hensarling is supporting together with all the other Republicans. A good debate. Let's continue this discussion down the road. Thanks very much to both of you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Wolf.
Up next, new information.